$12 to my name, and the woman who looked right through me. I was 32 years old, sitting at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning with exactly $12.43 in my checking account, and an eviction notice taped to the fridge like a silent threat. The cheap overhead light flickered every few seconds, buzzing like it was tired of my life too. My hands were sticky with hot glue as I pressed fake gemstones onto a plastic crown that was supposed to pass for medieval royalty in a low-budget indie film. If you squinted hard enough, it almost looked real. That was my job, making fake things look valuable. My phone buzzed again. I didn't even look this time. Another creditor. Another reminder that talent didn't mean survival. I let it vibrate itself into silence and went back to the crown, even though my fingers were cramping and my eyes burned from exhaustion. "You're gonna give yourself carpal tunnel," Shane said from the couch, his voice lazy and half-slurred. My roommate had bartender wisdom, the kind you pick up from listening to other people's disasters while pretending your own aren't happening. He lifted his third beer in a mock toast, and all for something nobody's ever gonna see. "Better than sleeping in my car," I muttered. The crown tilted, then collapsed completely. Rhinestones scattered across the scratched linoleum like broken promises. I stared at them for a long moment, chest tight, throat burning, wondering how the hell my life had ended up like this. Art school dropout, freelance prop designer, overqualified for minimum wage, underqualified for stability, invisible to everyone who mattered. 2 hours later, I found myself standing in a small town 40 minutes outside Detroit at a harvest festival I never wanted to attend. Shane said I needed perspective. What I needed was money. The place smelled like apple cider and forced optimism. Families laughed. Kids ran around with painted faces. Booths sold overpriced pumpkins and handmade soap that screamed someone's hobby survived capitalism. I stuck out in my ripped jeans and paint-stained flannel like a warning label. "Ladies and gentlemen," a volunteer called through a megaphone, "we need 2 more volunteers for the apple-picking relay." Before I could escape, someone shoved a number into my hand. Great. That's when I saw her. She stood near a black BMW that probably cost more than everything I owned combined. Cream-colored coat, perfectly styled blonde hair, untouched by the wind. She checked her phone like this entire town was an inconvenience. Money radiated off her like heat. The volunteer grabbed her arm too, smiling way too hard. "You're in." She turned, clearly irritated, until her eyes met mine. For just a second, something unreadable crossed her face. "I'm Catherine," she said, extending a manicured hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "Bailey." She smiled, polite but distant. "I should warn you, I've never picked apples before." I laughed before I could stop myself. "That's okay, my experience caps out at Whole Foods." The whistle blew. Chaos erupted. She treated each apple like it might explode, carefully twisting them off the branches. I grabbed handfuls, climbing trees with desperation-fueled energy. "Just grab them," I shouted. "I don't want to bruise them. They're going into pie filling." Somehow we won. At the prize table, they handed us a bottle of local wine and a diner gift certificate. Catherine stared at them like foreign objects. "Congratulations," she said, and there was no condescension in her voice, just surprise. "Want to split the wine?" I asked, shocking myself. She hesitated, checked her phone, then really looked at me. "Yes," she said, "I do." Murphy's Diner had cracked vinyl booths and a menu that hadn't changed since the 80s. I ordered the cheapest thing that would actually fill me. She ordered a salad. "So," she asked, "what do you do?" "I design props for movies, low-budget stuff." "That sounds creative." "It sounds broke," I said. She laughed, not polite, real. "I invest in companies," she said. Of course she did. We talked for 2 hours. About Detroit, about loneliness, about how success doesn't insulate you from emptiness. When we stood in the parking lot, she walked me to Shane's beat-up Honda. "This was unexpected," she said. "Good unexpected or bad unexpected." She stepped closer, pulled out a business card. "I might have a project for you." "What kind of project?" "The kind that pays well." She walked away before I could ask anything else. 3 days later, I stood in the lobby of a glass tower that screamed you don't belong here, clutching that card like a lottery ticket. Security eyed my thrift store blazer. The receptionist barely hid her disdain. The elevator carried me to the 32nd floor. Catherine's office overlooked the Detroit River, marble glass power. She ended a phone call mid-sentence when she saw me. "Bailey," she said warmly, "thanks for coming." She offered coffee, the good kind. "I'm launching a new initiative," she said. "Investing in Detroit's creative community. I need a promotional video." "And you thought of me because everything else I've seen is polished nonsense. You're real." She slid a contract across the table. $15,000, half up front. My hands shook. "What's the catch?" "No catch." When I signed, she watched me like this meant something more. "There's one more thing," she said. "Yes. Would you like to have dinner tonight?" The way she asked told me it wasn't just business. That night changed everything. And I had no idea that walking into her world would soon expose how cruel it could be to people like me, and how fast karma could come for those who believed money made them superior. They looked down on me until she walked in. The country club was the kind of place where silence felt expensive. Even the air seemed curated, soft, restrained, heavy with money. I could feel eyes on me the second I stepped through the doors, like I de-violated an unspoken rule just by existing there. My borrowed dress suddenly felt thinner, cheaper, louder than it had in my apartment mirror. Catherine didn't notice at first. She was greeting people, men in tailored suits, women wrapped in pearls and entitlement. Everyone smiling that tight, practice smile people wear when they're judging you before you even open your mouth. "This is Bailey," Catherine said proudly when she finally brought me over. She made the Detroit video. A pause. Not long, just long enough. "Oh," one woman said, eyes flicking over my shoes. "How nice." Another man chuckled. "Very authentic work. Must be refreshing not worrying about polish." I knew that word, authentic. It meant rough. It meant lower class. It meant you should be grateful we're even speaking to you. I smiled anyway. Dinner was worse. They talked over me, about mergers, about golf trips, about schools that cost more per year than my entire upbringing. One man leaned across the table and asked loudly, "So, Bailey, is this your first time somewhere like this?" Heat crawled up my neck. "Yes," I said evenly. "Well," he smirked, "everyone has to see how the other half lives at some point." Catherine's fork stopped midair. Before she could speak, the waiter arrived and hesitated when he got to me. "I'm sorry, miss," he said, glancing at the table. "Are you with this party?" The table went quiet. I felt $12 poor again. Eviction notice poor, invisible poor. "Yes," Catherine said calmly, "she is." The waiter flushed and hurried away, but the damage was done. The woman beside him whispered something I didn't catch. The man laughed again. I excused myself and went to the restroom, gripping the sink as my reflection stared back at me. Someone who didn't belong, no matter how talented she was. When I returned, Catherine was standing. "Since we're being so honest tonight," she said, voice clear, controlled, "I think it's time I shared something." The room turned. "The video you're all congratulating me for," she continued. "The one our investors loved, the one the board called the most emotionally resonant project we've funded in years." She looked at me. That was her. Silence. "Bailey didn't just design it," Catherine went on. "She conceptualized it, shot it, edited it, and delivered it under budget and ahead of schedule. Because while some people here inherited money, she earned skill." Faces shifted, smiles cracked. "And one more thing," Catherine added. "As of this morning, Bailey is no longer a freelancer. She's the creative director of our new urban arts division." The man who'd laughed at me choked on his drink. Catherine turned to him. "Which, Marcus, you voted against funding. Funny how that worked out." The woman with pearls suddenly found her voice. "Oh, we didn't realize." "No," Catherine said. "You didn't care." She took my hand. "We're leaving." As we walked out, conversations restarted behind us, hushed, frantic backpedaling. Outside, the night air felt lighter, real. "I'm sorry," Catherine said softly. "I should have protected you." I shook my head, heart pounding. "You did." She smiled. No, I just started. They tried to break me quietly, so I let my work speak loudly. The promotion didn't change how they looked at me. It just gave them a new reason to resent me. On my first official day as creative director, I walked into the office carrying the same worn messenger bag I'd owned for years. Conversations stopped. Eyes followed. Someone whispered, not quietly enough, "That's her." I was given a glass office with no welcome, no introduction, and a calendar already packed with meetings I hadn't been invited to schedule. Catherine had warned me. They won't make it easy, but knowing something intellectually doesn't prepare you for how it feels in your chest. The resistance was subtle. Deadlines changed without notice. Files went missing. Feedback arrived late and vague, not quite aligned, needs refinement, perhaps too raw. One executive suggested I bring in someone more experienced to supervise my ideas. I was 32 with over a decade of hands-on work. They meant someone like them. The worst was Marcus. He smiled when we passed in the hallway, but his emails dripped with passive aggression. He questioned budgets publicly. He CC'd half the board on minor issues. He once asked, during a meeting, if I'd be emotionally comfortable leading a team under pressure. I answered calmly, then I stayed late. Night after night, I poured everything into the flagship project Catherine had trusted me with, a citywide campaign spotlighting overlooked artists, tradespeople, and small businesses. I didn't polish the truth. I honored it. Faces lined with years of work, hands rough with skill, stories no one had ever invested in. 2 days before the board review, Marcus tried his final move. He called an emergency meeting, claiming my project was off-brand and financially risky. He presented selective clips out of context, framing them as unprofessional. I sat quietly. When he finished, Catherine looked at me. "Your response." I stood and connected my laptop. "I anticipated concerns," I said evenly, "so I prepared the full data." Charts appeared, engagement metrics, pre-launch testing, audience response, focus groups, investor interest. Then I played the full cut. The room changed. People leaned forward. One woman wiped her eyes, another whispered, "This is powerful." When it ended, no one spoke. Until Catherine did. "This," she said, "is why I hired Bailey." Marcus opened his mouth. Catherine raised a hand. "And Marcus," she added calmly, "since you attempted to undermine a division you voted against and interfered with internal files, HR will be following up." His face drained of color. The meeting ended quickly after that. Later, as I packed up, an assistant stopped me. "They're talking about it everywhere," she said. "The board loved it." I stepped outside into the evening air, my phone buzzing with messages. Artists thanking me, partners asking to collaborate, numbers climbing higher than anyone predicted. Catherine met me by the elevator. "They tried to bury you," she said softly. I smiled, tired but steady. "They forgot I know how to build from nothing." She took my hand, and for the first time I understood something deeply and permanently. Respect doesn't come from where you start, it comes from what you refuse to give up. They attacked my past, not knowing it was my power. Success has a way of making people curious and cruel. The campaign went live on a Monday morning. By Tuesday, it was everywhere. Local news, industry blogs, social media clips racking up numbers I'd never seen attached to my name. Artists from neighborhoods I grew up in were being called visionaries instead of struggling. For the first time, I felt like I'd built something that mattered. That's when the emails started. Anonymous at first, then not. "Is this really the person representing your company? No formal degree, questionable background. Do investors know where she comes from?" Marcus didn't write them himself. He didn't have to. People like him knew how to wound without leaving fingerprints. One afternoon, HR called me in. "Just routine," they said, eyes avoiding mine. Some concerns were raised. They laid it out carefully, like a courtesy. My dropped-out status, my unstable work history, my financial struggles. As if survival were a flaw. I walked out with my spine straight and my hands shaking. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. Still the same apartment, even with the new salary, wondering if this was the moment it all collapsed. If they'd finally found the excuse to send me back where I belonged. Catherine came over without calling. "They're scared," she said after I told her everything. You're proof their system isn't perfect. I don't want to be a liability, I whispered. She knelt in front of me, taking my hands. Your past isn't something to hide, it's your credibility. The next day, Catherine called an all-hands meeting. People filled the auditorium, buzzing with speculation. Marcus sat near the front, confident, smiling. Catherine walked on stage alone. I've heard concerns, she began, about qualifications, background, fit. She paused. Let me be clear, we did not hire Bailey despite her past. We hired her because of it. A screen lit up behind her. My work, old photos, community sets, indie films, artists I'd collaborated with over the years. This company claims to value innovation, Catherine continued. Innovation doesn't come from comfort. It comes from people who had to adapt, build, and survive. She turned to face me in the crowd. Bailey understands our audience because she is our audience. Applause started slowly, then spread. Marcus didn't clap. 2 days later, HR announced an investigation into internal misconduct and targeted harassment. Marcus was escorted out a week after that. No announcement, no apology, just gone. When Catherine and I stood on the balcony that night, the city glowing below us, she squeezed my hand. They thought your past would break you, she said. I smiled, feeling steadier than ever. It built me. When they finally respected me, I chose who deserved it. The silence after Marcus left was louder than his sabotage had ever been. People started knocking on my glass office door instead of talking around it. Executives who had ignored my emails now asked for quick thoughts. Assistants smiled differently, carefully, like they were recalibrating where I fit in the hierarchy. Respect, I learned, often arrives late and pretending it was always there. With the campaign's success, the company approved a major expansion. New funding, new hires, new attention. I was asked to lead the selection committee for emerging creators, people from the same neighborhoods I'd once been told were too risky to invest in. The first applications broke my heart. So much talent, so much struggle, so many people one missed paycheck away from disappearing. Then one name stopped me cold. Shane, my roommate, the bartender, the guy who'd let me crash on his couch when I couldn't make rent. He'd applied quietly without telling me, submitting a concept for a community arts bar that doubled as a training space for local creatives. Some board members laughed when they saw it. A bartender, one scoffed, is this a joke? I felt something settle in my chest. No, I said evenly, it's vision. They argued, I listened. Then I did something I never could have afforded to do before. I stood my ground. This company doesn't need more polished failures, I said. It needs real people with real reach. Shane has that. Catherine met my eyes across the table. Approved, she said. When I told Shane, he just stared at me, then laughed, then cried, then hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. You didn't forget, he said. I couldn't, I replied. You never let me. At the launch event months later, the same people who once dismissed me praised my leadership. Cameras flashed. Applause filled the room. I spotted a former executive who'd once questioned my presence. He approached carefully. You've done remarkable work, he said. We misjudged you. I smiled, calm, unbittered. I know. Not everyone deserves access just because they finally learn respect. Later that night, Catherine and I stood side by side, watching artists and entrepreneurs celebrate opportunities that didn't exist before. You changed this place, she said softly. I shook my head. We did. She leaned into me, warm and steady. And for the first time, I understood that power isn't about proving people wrong. It's about choosing who you lift once you no longer need their approval. They watched me rise and learned too late what respect really costs. The invitation arrived on thick cream-colored paper, embossed, formal, impossible to ignore. A national leadership summit, my name printed beneath the title keynote speaker, not guest, not +1, speaker. I stared at it for a long time, remembering the eviction notice that had once lived on my fridge. The night of the summit, I stood backstage listening to the low murmur of an audience filled with power brokers, investors, and executives who had spent their lives deciding whose voices mattered. Some of them recognized my name now. Most didn't know the story behind it. Catherine squeezed my hand. Say what you wish someone had told you. When I stepped into the lights, the room went quiet. I was once told I didn't belong in rooms like this, I began. Not because I lacked ability, but because I lacked polish, money, and the right background. A few heads lifted. I was underestimated, dismissed, nearly erased, not loudly, but efficiently. I told them about $12, about invisible labor, about being judged before being heard. And then, I said, someone chose to look closer. I gestured to Catherine in the front row. But here's the truth, I continued. Opportunity without respect is just another form of control. Real justice is making sure the next person doesn't have to survive what you normalized. The applause wasn't immediate. Then it was overwhelming. Afterward, people lined up, some to praise, some to apologize, some just to listen. One young woman clutched my hands and whispered, "I didn't think people like us ever won." I smiled. We do, just not alone. Weeks later, I moved out of my old apartment, not into a mansion, into a space filled with light, art, and room to breathe. Shane's Place thrived. The program expanded nationally. On a quiet evening, Catherine and I walked through the city, the same streets I'd once felt trapped by. "Do you ever think about how close you were to giving up?" she asked. I nodded all the time. She stopped, turning to face me. "I'm glad you didn't." I took her hand, steady and sure. So were they, those who once looked down on me, watching from a distance now, realizing too late that respect isn't granted by status. It's earned by how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. When they tried to rewrite the story, I became the author. Success has a strange side effect. It attracts people who want credit for work they once dismissed. The article dropped on a Friday morning, a glossy business profile celebrating the company's visionary leadership. My name appeared once, buried near the bottom, framed as supporting talent discovered through executive insight. I read it twice, then a third time, feeling something colder than anger settle in my chest. They were trying to rewrite history. By noon, my inbox filled with messages. Artists, team members, even junior staff. "Did you see this?" "That's not how it happened." "Are you okay?" I was, because this time I wasn't powerless. Catherine called me into her office. The article sat open on her desk, unreadable beneath the weight of her silence. "They didn't expect you to notice," she said. "They didn't expect me to matter," I replied. She nodded once. "What do you want to do?" That question, "What do you want?" still felt radical. "I want the truth on record," I said. "Not just for me, for everyone who came after." The following week, I was invited, unexpectedly, to speak on a live industry panel about discovering grassroots talent. The same editor who'd minimized my role sat in the front row, confident, pen poised. I smiled when the camera light turned red. "I keep hearing the word discovered," I began calmly, "as if talent is something hidden until someone powerful claims it." The room stilled. "I wasn't discovered," I continued. "I was working, struggling, creating, long before anyone with a title noticed." A murmur rippled through the audience. "And the people we fund now," I added, "they weren't found either, they were overlooked." The editor's pen stopped moving. "I'm proud of the work," I finished, "but I won't let the story be told in a way that erases the cost of getting here." The clip went viral by nightfall. The article was quietly updated 2 days later. A public correction followed. Then an apology, carefully worded, painfully late. But the real justice came in the emails from creators across the country. "You said what we couldn't. They can't ignore us anymore. Thank you for not letting them take it." That evening, I stood in my new studio, walls lined with art from people who once had nothing but skill and stubborn hope. Catherine watched me from the doorway. "They tried to shrink you again," she said. I smiled, steady and unafraid. "They forgot something." "What's that?" "I know how to build without them." She crossed the room and took my hand. And I realized then that the final form of respect isn't applause or titles or money, it's ownership. Of your voice, your work, your truth. They could never take that from me again.